saying hello today on August the 5th, 2010 from Peterborough, Ontario. Just outside that town, we've got the village of Keene, which is home to the Lang Pioneer Village. And here is one of the very knowledgeable local history experts, and she's a costume interpreter. Julia's going to take me into the village church. Please tell me a little bit about the significance of these churches here during early pioneer life.
Church was so important to the early pioneers. The faith was important. The Catholic churches, areas like Durrell became a Catholic area. They kept going to churches, schools, and everything. This is the Methodist church. You'll see it's not totally ornate.
It's very simple.
People,
yeah.
Very simple. This was located in Glen Angus, so it's north of Peterborough. And you can see in the winter time there might have been a wood stove here because it's not heated.
Right. Look at that's the organ in the corner.
Yes.
Is that the organ?
That's the organ.
Wow.
It's actually played at Christmas and at weddings. We have people that rent the church for their weddings.
Really?
They have weddings here, yes.
Amazing. I can imagine, and that would have been the altar. Really? Now, tell me a little bit, you were alluding before to the division of labor between men and women on the farms. What was the role of women? What was the role of men? What was the role of the church?
Men, they would basically work plow the fields, of course the horses, they would have to repair things, they would plant the fields, plow them, they would have to take the grain and everything to the mill. Sons would follow the father. If there were no sons, then if there were only daughters, they would have to help too. Especially during the busy times in the fields and that, they would do haying, everyone would pitch in. The women in the early times, of course, the more girls you had, so if you say, oh, this family had 9 or 10 children, actually in the beginning that would have been wonderful because you had more hands. Later on it would have been more of a burden because you didn't need as many children to have a farm, but yes, everybody would help. Even when you were young, you would help maybe bring some wood in or do some chores. The girls would have to make soap and candles from tallow from animal fat. They would have to do the washing, they would have to do spinning. The men, a lot of times if they had a loom, the women would get it ready and the men in the winter would do the weaving.
The men would do the weaving?
Yes, because
that's interesting.
And in the winter time they would travel more. It was easier in their sleighs to go across lakes and rivers, and they had more time, a little more time to travel. And sometimes people would get married in the winter because all the family would be there, the houses would be decorated and that, so it would have been an ample time to get married.
So at the beginning, when the first pioneers came to this area, which was probably maybe around the 1820s, 1830s?
1818, David Fife's cabin is 1822, so around that time.
Early 1800s.
Yes.
That life at that time was all about work. There was no leisure, right?
No leisure at all. Sometimes your nearest neighbor might be 20 miles away.
Wow. Very solitary life.
Oh yes, in the beginning it was. You would get to your plot of land not knowing what it was like. And
it was probably all rocks and stones and trees.
Covered with trees. So you would have to clear an area. David Fife, we have his cabin here. You can see a small area where they would clear, put up a cabin. And that wasn't them thinking it's going to be our permanent home. It would have just been a makeshift home.
Just shelter, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some just built onto it. Others, they would have built a bigger house, like our Fitzpatrick house in 1846, and used that as a drive shed or as chicken coop or things like
Recycle it for some other purpose.
And
everything was reused at that time.
Everything.
That is one thing that we are no longer familiar with our landfills and our consumer culture.
No, just throw things out. If something broke, they would try and fix it, and they would fix it, or they would use things for other purposes.
And pass it on to the next generation. And every part of the animal was eaten too.
Everything, even the fat. Like I say, you made candles out of the fat.
Exactly.
Everything was used. Nothing was thrown out.
There are actually a lot of lessons that people nowadays could be learning from that era.
Definitely, yes.
Because it was completely sustainable living. It was in harmony with nature, wasn't it?
Yes, and if you notice everything, there's a lot of wood. Well, in Canada we do have a lot of trees, so that's what you use. That's what they made things from, was the wood.
Exactly.
And things were very primitive at first until, you know, they built roads. It was their job to, from where their roads, their boundaries of their property, they had to clear that land for the road. And then they had to clear so much land every year to keep up with their agreement of getting this land.
Yeah. Subsistence farming was a very hard life.
Oh, yes.
And here you can actually learn about it from A to Z.
You can, yes, definitely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.